So welcoming you and setting the tone for the next 30 minutes, we're going to be uncovering the truths and the false information about the Portugal Golden Visa. So I'm Chris Land from Marlow Bray. I've got 17 years experience working in wealth management and helping clients achieve second citizenship. Myself and my team, we've helped 300 families with big financial decisions over the last few years. And happy to say around about 50% of our clients come back to us as referrals, which is always a proof of the pudding, a testament to the advice that we give. But this next 30 minutes is not just about me, it is about Tirso Olazabal. So Tirso, tell us who you are and a bit about your background.
Thank you very much, Chris, for having me here today. Well, my name is Tirso Olazabal. I'm a partner at MDME Lawyers. MDME Lawyers is a full-service law firm with offices in Lisbon, in Hong Kong, where I'm normally based, and Macau. I had our private client practice, which focus, among others, on the Golden Visa applications, and we have been helping investors from all over the world for many, many years since the inception of this program in obtaining successfully their Golden Visa.
Fantastic. Great intro. Thank you. So why should you stay tuned for the next 30 minutes? Well, the answer is, do you want to live or retire in the EU? Do you want to have visa-free access to 27 EU countries? Do you wish for your children to benefit from an EU education, potentially paying local rates instead of international rates? And ultimately, an EU passport and a Portuguese passport is ranked top five in the world. Yeah. So if you want to find out more, stay listening. So as the title of the webinar is The Truth About the Portugal Golden Visa, we're going to play a little game, Tirso.
Let's go.
We're going to play a truth or false round. So 10 questions. I'm going to fire them at you, and simply you're going to answer true or false. First of all, Portugal currently offers a Golden Visa program which is open for investors.
True.
Investing in Portuguese real estate is one of the ways to qualify for a Golden Visa.
False.
False. Indeed it is. In Portugal, the sun shines more than 250 days a year. True or false?
True.
Fantastic. It's a great place to spend a bit of time. 4, Portugal's Golden Visa program involves receiving an actual golden passport made of real gold. True or false?
False.
Indeed. The value would even be higher than it actually is. Golden Visa holders are automatically granted Portuguese citizenship. True or false?
That's false.
Okay. The Golden Visa program allows for family members to be included in the application. True or false?
True.
The Golden Visa for Portugal has a minimum stay requirement.
True.
Indeed. Applicants need to demonstrate fluency in the Portuguese language to qualify. True or false? Qualify for citizenship, I should add.
True.
Thank you. And the Golden Visa program can lead to Portuguese citizenship after 5 years. True or false?
True.
And the last question, the minimum fund investment for Portugal Golden Visa is now €500,000. True or false?
True.
I'm pleased to say you got 10 out of 10, and if you'd failed at any of them, it would have been a disaster.
After all these years doing this every day, it would be bad if I wouldn't.
It would be a failure, but you passed very basic legal knowledge there, Tirso, so thank you. So firstly, Tirso, can you tell us now, for people who are considering the Portugal Golden Visa, how they do it? What are the requirements? What do they have to invest in? Because the rules have changed. Real estate used to be an option, and now it's not. So can you tell us a little bit more about what people can and can't invest in and the other routes available as well?
Sure. So that's a good question, Chris, because very recently the Golden Visa program changed their investment requirements. So this led to some people to think that maybe the program would end it totally, which is incorrect. So the program is still on and is still available for any investor. but the investment requirements have changed a little bit. So before, people could invest in real estate, and that is no longer possible. Okay, so the routes, I would say the primary routes that we see nowadays being selected by the investors are, first one, the investment in investment funds in Portugal. So that those funds, they need to have a maturity of at least 5 years at the time of investment. They need to be funds regulated under the Portuguese supervisor authority. And the funds themselves, they need to invest at least 60% of their funds in Portuguese companies. Okay, the minimum amount of investment is 500,000 euros. The second option that we have now available is the setting up of a company in Portugal and the creation of jobs, permanent jobs in Portugal. Well, this is more oriented for investors that really want to have a business ongoing in Portugal. And the third level of investment that is still eligible for Golden Visa, which has not been too much used in the past, is the donation route, which can go as low as 250,000. So all the other options, the fund investment and the setting up of company and creation of jobs in Portugal, it requires at least an investment of 500,000 euros, while the donation, which is not that popular, can go as low as 250,000 euros.
Fantastic. And since the new rules came into force, Tirso, what's been the most popular route that clients have used in order to get the Golden Visa?
Well, without any doubt, it has been the fund investment. It has been the fund investment first because it gives the opportunity for someone to do proper investment and to generate returns. Secondly, it was already an investment that was used very often by the investors when they had the option to go for real estate. So that's not something new. That was something that was already ongoing and used by the investors to do their Golden Visa application. So they pretty much maintain that level of investment. I should point out now that those real estate funds that were before used to do the Golden Visas and to do those investments could invest in real estate. Now, with the new law, those funds cannot invest in real estate, and that cannot be real estate funds or funds that have the primary investment real estate. So you can see that the Portuguese government, cut along the way everything that is linked to real estate.
Yeah, fantastic. Good explanation. Just picking up on your earlier point, you talked about the regulator with these funds. Now, my background's wealth management. I've been, as I say, advising clients since 2007 on big financial decisions. And, most of my clients, generally invest $500,000, 1 million US euros and above. And can you tell us a little bit more about the regulator in Portugal and how clients are protected? Because here, clients previously feel quite comfortable investing in a hotel development because they can go and see it, they can touch it, they can go into the reception area. It might have had a brand on it they recognize. It might have been Hilton or Wyndham or something else. Whereas now clients are putting their money into a fund that's invested, as you say, mostly in Portugal. And ultimately, the regulator has to do their job of making sure these funds stack up and there's rules that are adhered to. So can you tell us a little bit more about that how that works and how clients' money is protected?
Sure. So I have pretty much a different perspective on that respect, and in the sense that now the Golden Visa has turned out to be something that is purely institutionalized. So everything is up to the funds, the fund managers, and the regulators. So we are working under a regulated market, which offers much more protection than before with the property investments. that possibly, if you were investing with a solid developer or with a brand behind that property, like a Hilton or whatever it is, you could feel that comfort. Is correct. Yes. And of course, property investment is something that someone can go, they can see it, they can stay on it, and so on. But it is also true that there was a lot of damage that was done also and especially on the residential market, property market in Portugal, through prices that were not fair or that were not adjusted to the reality. So I would say that now with the regulated market and with the funds, everything is much more protected and fair in terms of investments and what you can expect. Secondly, I'm going to just to finish with the regulator. The regulator is the CMVM, so it's the equivalent, for example, in Hong Kong to an SFC. The regulator has and applies strict requirements to all these funds, and especially to the fund managers that need to show that they have certain levels of capacity, experience, knowledge, and they pass through all a vetting process that will then enable them or the fund managers to manage these type of funds. Okay.
Interesting. So, I mean, you hit on the word institutional there, and all of a sudden that puts my mindset above the retail category. And when you operate at institutional levels, you have various checks and balances that the fund operator has to go through in order to maintain its regulatory status. So that gives investors a very high level of comfort. And, you know, global regulators these days are pretty robust. You know, if you look at the SEC in the US, if you look at the FCA in the UK, you look at the South Africa regulator, everyone now has a very high duty of care to clients. So Portugal regulator, is up there in terms of processes and...
Well, certainly, Chris, and let me just add that people might think, well, but the regulator in Portugal, and maybe we are not very familiar with Portugal, a small country, or you see, but the truth is that the regulator also and needs to comply with regulations from the EU. Okay, so we are talking about a wider dimension. It's not only country by country. So we have EU directives that nowadays are applicable to all the EU countries in this field, in the funds.
So it's ultimately Brussels that kind of is the higher authority.
Correct. Yeah. So you have different levels of protection and of inspection that enhances the protection and the comfort of an investor.
Fantastic. Great. So we tick the compliance, regulation, and safety box. Going back to one of the earlier questions as well in terms of the requirements. So we've discussed it has to be a fund. It can be a donation as well. In terms of the process, if a client wants to get started today, talk us through the steps the client needs to go through in order to get the Golden Visa.
Okay. So everything, or the first stage of the application is or goes around formalities. Okay, so there's some documentation that we need to obtain from the investor, and depending if the investor wants to apply for family reunification, as you said in the beginning of our Q&A, this program offers the possibility in one single application to accommodate different members of the family that will then themselves also be entitled to acquire the Portuguese passport. So we will need to obtain documents, personal documents from the investor, such as, their passport, criminal records from the country of where he is at the moment living, or his country of residency. There's an option of one and the other for the main applicant. For the family members, depending if he's bringing the wife, the marriage certificate, the kids, the birth certificates, there are certain formalities that we need to comply with, of legalization of documents and so on. The client will need, in the meantime, to start opening a bank account in Portugal, so that the investment that is, let's say, done in the fund goes through his bank account, because we will need a declaration from the bank in Portugal stating that that investment was performed by that person to acquire units in that fund, okay? So we will need to open that bank account. To open a bank account, they will need to obtain a Portuguese tax number. Also, to invest in a fund and to make an investment in Portugal, you need to have a Portuguese tax number. For that purpose, you need to appoint a tax representative. Okay, so this is the kind of things that we do at the very first stage, while the client is in the process of selecting the investment.
Yeah, fantastic. And you mentioned tax, previously under direct property investment route, and then the hotel options route. A lot of these investment routes paid out income to investors. So some of our work behind the scenes was helping clients complete tax returns. And it's a nice problem to have. Your investment is generating income. Unfortunately, you have to pay tax on that. But with the investment rules now as they are, what's the tax treatment of these funds? If a client is investing 500,000 in a qualifying fund in Portugal, they're making 5-10% a year on it, or at the end they've doubled their money. What's the tax consequences of that?
Well, this pretty much depends on how the distribution of those dividends are done. Okay, some funds they pay them on a yearly basis. Some funds they pay on a quarterly basis. Some funds they will then have a plus at the end of the subscription of the fund, when the maturity of the fund is closed. And I would prefer to leave it to a tax expert that we do have in our team as well, to, depending on the fund and how is it structured, advise on the taxation of those structures.
Great. And I think what we can say from the transactions that we've done for our clients so far, and the types of funds that we put in front of our clients, first of all, there's no tax on entry. Whereas a property, you're paying stamp duty to the government when you buy it. That's money gone. And then secondly, previously, when that investment produces an income, you get to pay tax on that income. So compare that with the investment fund route. There's no tax upon entry, and the funds that we prefer, the dividend or the return is paid out either yearly or the end. And one of the fantastic benefits of the new rules is there's no tax to pay, subject to the funding structure the right way. So really important point to consider. It's not just how your money's invested and where, it's ultimately what you're going to get out of it net afterwards.
That's correct, Chris. And let me just add that along with that, when you own a property, there are some ongoing costs that you need also to factor, like the maintenance of the property, the management fees of the property, the municipality tax, that is a tax that is paid every year to the Portuguese government when you hold a property in Portugal. Those kind of costs you don't need, or you don't have them when you invest in a fund.
Yeah, precisely. Okay. And a lot of our clients we've taken on in the last few years for Portugal, they've had generally one of 3 or 4 main objectives. Many to get a Portuguese passport. Portuguese passport gives you access to all the Schengen area, 27 countries and rising. Other clients have wanted it as perhaps an opportunity to retire elsewhere in Europe, or spend time in the south of France, in Spain. And of course, once you've got your passport, you're free to roam throughout the EU. Other clients' motivation has been education, particularly clients whose kids, are perhaps 3, 4, 5 years away from university. Now, you've got kids yourself, right?
Correct.
How old are your kids?
I do. They are 2 years and a half and 5 years old.
Okay, so a little bit young to be considering university, but you were educated at a very good Lisbon University?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the costs to send your child to university in Portugal now? Because we know in the UK how expensive they are for international students. Generally in the UK and the US, you're being charged as a parent, 3 to 4 times the amount a domestic student would be paid, would be charged. Yep. And sometimes for the UK, that can run up to 30, 40,000 pounds per year. What's it like in Portugal?
Well, we are a country where education is something that is taken care very seriously in Portugal. And we do have great universities that are ranked in the Financial Times. And those universities, they can be either private or public. It is the case that some or the majority of the best universities in Portugal are the public ones. It might sound strange, but that's correct. Then you might have different options and a few options for the same graduation and the same, for example, for a law degree, you might have 2 or 3 options, but at least if you have 3, 2 of them would be a public university. So the quality of the universities are very good. And because they are publicly subsidized by the government, the fees that you pay on an annual basis are very, very low and almost insignificant when compared to the numbers that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So, and then the private universities, of course, you are paying every month, but we are talking also about numbers that do not compare to the numbers that you can see in other countries like UK or even in France or other EU countries, not to mention, of course, United States and so on.
Yeah. And I think going back to clients' motivations, university planning, education planning is often a key part of this whole citizenship by advice conversations that we go through with clients. So the outcome here with Portugal Golden Visa is very clear. Some very big advantages for families with kids at some point will be going to university. Obviously, living in Portugal, you're entitled to free healthcare.
Correct.
And with the Golden Visa, you're entitled to work as well or open a business should you wish.
Correct.
So there's a variety of different outcomes. And our starting point really with client discussions is what's important to you. And then we channel the advice accordingly. So far we've discovered that Golden Visa is still available.
That's it.
We've touched on the legal structure or how funds are protected by the regulator.
Correct.
We've discussed the process in terms of the documentation and from a legal point of view, how the application is submitted. And then we've just touched on education and how the outcomes are as a Portuguese person, right? If you've got a Portugal Golden Visa, right, you've got the same rights pretty much.
That's it.
Apart from the right to vote.
Apart from the right to vote that you will then acquire it once you get the passport.
Yeah. So then let's just flick on to ultimately a big goal for a lot of clients here. It's the passport. So talk us through, Tirso, what's the process to get a Portuguese passport? What do people have to do? And, from what you've learned from taking clients through that end of the advice.
Sure.
The final stage, effectively.
So we are quite experienced on that as well, on the citizenship application, which is different from the Golden Visa application. And for a Golden Visa investor, I would say that the main requirements that they need to bear in mind in order to get their citizenship and their Portuguese passport is, first, they will need to maintain their Golden Visa for 5 years at least. So the Golden Visa is renewed every 2 years. So they will need to maintain that visa for 5 years. To renew the visa, basically, you need to show that you maintain your investment, that you keep your investment, and you will need also to show again your criminal record. Once you reach those 5 years period, you will then just need to take an elementary Portuguese test. Okay, when I say elementary, is something that is not difficult for someone that puts elementary effort on learning the language, which I think that every other investor at some point would be interested in doing it. And those are the main requirements for the citizenship. The citizenship application is then a matter of filling in these formalities and submitting the application to the registry, the civil registry.
Fantastic. So we talked about a language test, a basic language test, which I believe they can do at any point. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That
so
can
once
be
you've
done
got it in the bank, it's there until you decide to use it effectively.
Yes.
We talked about the documentation, and we talked about the Golden Visa renewals. So to be clear, first of all, Golden Visa for 5 years.
Correct.
And then on year 6, you have the first opportunity to apply for that citizenship. And we have clients of nationalities whereby their country of origin doesn't allow them to obtain a second passport. Countries like Indonesia, countries like Singapore, countries like India, countries like China, for example. So for clients that want the EU access and can't apply for the Portuguese passport for whatever reason, what other option has a client got in that situation?
Well, you have, I would say, 2 options. One, you can get the permanent residency in Portugal. You don't need to opt for the Portuguese passport. You can do the permanent residency, which follows pretty much the same requirements. Or you can simply continue renewing your Golden Visa. So it doesn't mean that after 5 years, the Golden Visa is over. I know that most of the people look at the Golden Visa with the objective of fulfilling the 5 years to then start their citizenship application. But that also makes people forget that the Golden Visa itself can be renewed every 2 years.
So a permanent residency card gives you the same access to the EU as a passport. But if I'm right in saying it doesn't allow you to vote, is that right?
Well, it doesn't allow you to vote, and in some countries, EU countries, to live in that country.
Right.
Okay. Because that's the big difference between a passport, which gives you the full right to live in any EU country, and a permanent resident that is granted for a specific country. Okay. So you will have exactly the same level of protection of a Golden Visa, but at that point, you don't need to maintain your investment anymore.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think, a lot of the client conversations I have, people get hung up about that 5-6 year mark, and they get hung up at the outset. But in reality, there's no need to, because if you want to live in the EU, if you want to, spend time in Portugal, and you want the benefits that we've described, go through the program and worry about that decision later. You're at an older stage of life, you're probably a little bit clearer at a later stage where you want to be, where the kids want to be, and whether you do want to surrender your passport from your country of origin. So that's a really interesting point in terms of the outcome that people want, and the second choice of permanent residency. A lot of people do overlook that. And you've been doing this for a long time, as have I, Tirso, and along the journey, we learn the hacks, we learn the shortcuts, we learn the tips to make the transition or make the application process smoother for clients. And I'm really big on kind of communicating these to clients at the outset, because ultimately we want to maintain our track record for 100% acceptance. That's quite important. And we want to get clients as on the program as quickly as possible. Ultimately, you're paying for an outcome, and if we can expedite it, you're getting a quicker pathway to where you want to be. So, can you share any tips in terms of ways to fast track, shortcuts that you've learned, hacks in terms of documentation? Give us the inside knowledge here.
Well, basically, a no-go immediately would be someone that does not have a clean criminal record, or that has a crime that represents imprisonment in Portugal for more than 3 years. Secondly, I think that from what I've seen from many investors is that they should work with a reliable investment advisor, as well as a lawyer that has experience on doing the applications. Otherwise, we are talking about a lot of papers, okay, and you can get lost in translation very easily, okay. So if you work with a machine that has the routine in place and that immediately knows where to get those documents and how to get them legalized and ready to be submitted in Portugal, that is something that will shortcut the application immediately. Because that would allow us to submit the application quite fast, okay? Then, of course, there's a period where the application is with the immigration authorities for being decided. That at the moment can take some time, okay? Just to be fully transparent, but that's something that normally does not worry many investors, because they do not plan to immediately move to Portugal, okay? So that process is ongoing, and it's a matter of the lawyer following up with the authorities, the best they can. And of course, the most experienced the lawyer is, the best that would be handled.
Yeah, fantastic. And as I understand it, when a client applies and their application is submitted, it's someone in your Lisbon office that would accompany them to the immigration department.
Correct.
Hold their hand effectively.
Correct. So the big part, talking about ourselves, MDME lawyers, and myself, my team, the big part of the team, the majority of the team members are based in our Lisbon office, okay? So we have a team of immigration lawyers in that Lisbon office that will then go with the client to the biometric meeting in Lisbon, which only happens when you get your application accepted, and it's really the very first time where you must go to Portugal, okay? So we can submit your application without you going to Portugal, and only at that time you are really required to go, and one of our lawyers will go with you to that meeting to ensure that all the papers are in order, and if we need for any reason to sort out something, it will be done at that moment, so that you don't need to have any worries on coming back or sending documents again, and so on and so on. At that point, some of the documents that you've submitted might be expired because they have a validity of 6 months or 3 months, depending on the document. We'll let you know. But if you need to go straight away to that appointment and you can't get those documents on time, because those documents, they need to be provided by foreign authorities in your countries of origin, and so on, we have the way to conduct the meeting, the biometric meeting, and submitting those documents after the meeting without having to repeating everything again, okay?
Brilliant. That goes back into the hacks and shortcuts section that
we
discussed before.
Yes,
There's more to it. Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic. So we're getting towards the end now, and one takeaway that I've really took from the clients that we've onboarded and taken through the process over the last few years is the other options that people have had to get into Europe, to get a golden visa. And Spain is an option. Greece is an option. Portugal's been the most popular, and I believe is it about 11,000 plus applicants now since it started. And you got to look why the numbers are flocking to Portugal. And ultimately, the stay requirement is really unique to Portugal. Unlike Spain and Greece, if you want to go through to citizenship, you need to spend 6 months per year there. Now, for Spain, that's going to take you 10 years. Greece, it's similar. One of the attractions about Portugal is you can carry on your day-to-day life, where you're based today, family life, kids in college, school, etc. And the stay requirement, Tirso, is?
It's an average of 7 days per year, okay? And that you can play around that. So, for example, you can stay in a single year 14 days, so that you don't need to do the 7 days the other year, or 11 and 3 days the next year. So you can play around that. It's very flexible. It's well known, the program, for this exceptional flexibility that it offers to investors. That was thought in the way to grant also some comfort to people that want to have their daily lives and have their family orientation in a given country, to be able to apply for this visa without having to change their whole lives because of this. So that's pretty much unique on the Portuguese Golden Visa, and that's why it has proven to be so successful. Yeah.
So if you want EU access, all roads lead to Lisbon.
That's it, Lisbon, or Portugal in general, because Portugal is more than Lisbon, although Lisbon is a beautiful city and the capital, but the whole country is amazing, and it's worth a visit.
But it's not Rome, so yes. Fantastic. So if you like the content that you've digested here, feel free to like and subscribe to our channel. We have client testimonials. We have a wealth of information from our team, and we're here to support you with your application for Portugal. But more importantly, speak to us or reach out to us to get a consultation to understand what the investment options are, what you have to do, and we'll put more meat on the bone for you on a one-on-one call. But I hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you very much, Tirso.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you for everyone that will listen to this presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's it.